I've learned that if it feels good to do the more predictable thing, I'll just do it. Now, some people won't.
Hmm.
It depends on who you are, but I don't know. I still love the big slow themes, and they're getting bigger and they're getting slower.
Neil, thank you so much for your time today. A new project, a new album, Cosmic Cathedral, is coming very soon as we're talking. Uh, I've lost count how many releases you've released so far now. How do you feel? Like this is this just another Friday for you as we're recording, or like what does Neil Morse feel and go through emotionally when a new album is about to come out?
Oh, well, I'm usually on the next thing. But by the time records come out, I maybe have written, a couple other things. Or
Yeah,
we delivered this to Jerry Guidros to be mixed in September,
yeah.
and then I had Morse Fest in October, and then I've been working on a lot of different projects. So my mind is
Yeah,
on
yeah,
different music as creatively.
yeah,
Uh, but I'm very excited about this record, and I'm excited about it getting released. And I want to do better about celebrating each moment.
yeah,
You can get so task oriented that you don't celebrate each landmark.
yeah,
When we deliver the album, it's a landmark. When we announce it, it's a landmark, and when we release it, it's even more of one. So, yeah, I'm excited. I'm really excited about it. I love this record.
yeah. Do just to complete the joke about the back catalog, like, do you even have a copy of every single one of the albums that you've been on? Because that requires a small library at this point.
Yeah, probably not actually. Especially not all of the inner circle releases. And
Right.
there's the frontline releases. Then there's the live albums. Then there's the all the secondary, third, fourth, and fourth releases. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there. Yeah, yeah. I love being creative, and that's what I live to do. So I'm thankful I get to do it.
Yeah. A quick question on that, and I've asked this to a couple of just a few people that have had a, a similar massive catalog that you've worked on, whether it's your own project or whether you've been asked to join somebody or another band or a project. As you say, like, you are a creative person, you love doing this and you love writing and making music. What's your, is it a very bittersweet feeling for you that when you record an album or guest on an album, that that once that is done, that is kind of done for that song? Like, there's plenty of songs that you will record or write that will likely never be played live, for example. Is that, I was talking to, for example, Ian, for Jethro Tull a couple of weeks ago about their new album, and he can write 100 new albums. If he goes to play a show, even if it's a 4-hour show, the fans want to hear the classics and maybe one new song or what have you. What's that like for you as a creative person that enjoys that part so much? Is that sometimes bittersweet or a little sad that a song doesn't live on, if you will? I mean, lives on record, but not live.
Well, I consider myself to be very blessed in a way to not have had like huge hits like Ian Henderson had.
Right.
You know, people aren't waiting to hear my big hits. um,
Now you're fishing for
so
compliments, Neil. Come on.
no, no. I mean, there are, of course, there's certain songs and certain pieces that
Yeah, yeah.
that are more popular than others, but generally, I feel like my fans, they want to hear. They know I'm going to play the new project. They know they're
Hmm.
coming to Morse Fest, and they know, oh, we're going to do the whole Cosmic Cathedral album, and we're going to do the whole Neal Morse and the Resonance album. Last year, we're going to do all the Joseph pieces, and of course we do whole albums, that from the past that we know that are, very important to people's hearts.
Yeah.
Like we're
Classics, let's
doing,
call them.
yeah, classics. We're doing the One album also at Morse Fest this year. So, in a sense, I guess that's my version
Right.
of doing new stuff and old stuff, but it isn't so much like, oh, everybody wants to hear the old stuff, and
Right.
they'll tolerate the few new songs kind of thing, which I know it is with a lot of
Yeah.
what they call in the business. I think they call them heritage acts, or they used to.
Yeah. That's a one step beyond legacy band.
Yeah, it's that kind of thing. The
Yeah.
same thing. And that's great. I mean, basically, hey man, we should all be thankful if anybody wants to hear us play ever,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
What a blessing that is. But I do feel like it's really great for me that my fans want to hear the new thing in its entirety. And so it's usually the other way. How it's the other way around when I do concerts. Usually it's like we're going to play this whole new record, and then for the encore, we're going to visit some of the stuff that we'll do a medley of stuff better. So that's kind of how it is in my world.
With this new album, there's obviously the massive centerpiece with Deepwater Suite, which can be broken down into different sections. I don't know if I should call those separate songs or if I should call this one massive song. But, a question I wanted to ask you, because a lot of your albums have those massive songs, whether they are just one track and then it's like a 10-minute or a 13-minute song. But you also have done some really cool, much more shorter to the point songs, if you will. And I wanted to ask you, what's harder for you to write? Like a short song that is to the point, or a long song that continues to hold your attention, if you will? Those must be very different muscles to keep in shape to write. Like is it very different? What's harder for you?
I don't think it's particularly harder. It's more about you're kind of chasing the music. You're following the music where it feels like it wants to go, and so it's like, well, does this want to be a long piece, or does it feel like it wants to be a shorter piece? And I'm happy with both,
Mm-hmm.
whatever they want to be. If you feel like you got it, what it feels like, when it feels right, whether it's long or short. I might say that for me, it's more rare to have a really very progressive short song.
Yeah.
Like Thief from the No Hill for a Climber album, I think is a really good example of a short progressive song. But it's hard to go through a lot of different spaces and changes and tempo changes and all of that kind of stuff, and peaks and valleys in a very short period.
Yeah.
And I feel like Thief really pulls that off. A lot of the early Spock stuff does well with that, like Thoughts, for example, from Beware of Darkness, I think is a really good short, prog piece. But it's hard to fit all the fiddly bits and vocals and everything in the short piece,
Yeah.
So it's a little easier to do if you're on a larger canvas, I guess you might say.
Yeah. Is that a bit of like the double-edged sword of prog in a way, where prog should really about doing things different, being unique, finding your own path. But there's also so many prog bands out there, or projects, that sometimes feel like they're shackled by this idea of like, oh, prog should be 14-minute songs, and you should have at least 5 changes in the piece. How do you? Because it's like, oh, proggy songs. It's like, do you have your own definition for what prog really is?
Well, not really. I mean, that's a lot of people discuss that. I don't know. I guess if it's something that goes outside of normal song structure, usually,
Mhm.
but it doesn't have to. Um, there's usually elements of different genres thrown into one thing. You got classical elements and jazz
Mhm.
elements. Uh, but it also doesn't have to. you know, you can find examples where it wouldn't be that
Yeah,
way.
yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, it's I love it because for me, prog's about just being free, like you said, like
Right.
the freedom of if you feel like going into a jazz thing, you can go into a jazz thing. If you feel like taking the music wherever you feel like it wants to go, you can go there. Um, I do find myself falling into some patterns, which I'm sure if you listen to a lot of my records, you would hear that. Oh, now he's going to do the big fiddly bit before the slow end. Um, there's certain things that just feel really good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, I remember when we were making Spock's Beard 5, we were growing a little weary of the big endings with the big
Hmm.
themes. Because most of our epics had those. Um, and Dave Marrow said, well, because we when we did at the end of the day, the obvious way to end at the end of the day would be to go back to the big theme. Bum, 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 bum. But we were just like, oh gosh, we can't do that again. So we did this sort of smaller ending
Yeah.
thing, which is cool. But whenever I performed at the end of the day live, I do the big ending
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
because it just feels good, And Dave said, "Well, there's a lot of stuff that just you do the same, and you're never disappointed. You're not really disappointed that you're having dessert at the end of a meal, for example.
There you
It's
go.
like some things are just they just work and they're good, and so we ought not to be, you know, afraid of that, shall we say?
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
not.
yeah.
You're not. There's a lot of things that end similarly over your life, but you're happy about it, shall we
Yeah, yeah,
say?
yeah.
And
Exactly.
yeah, so but we try to change it up, but it's really a happy thing when it gets changed up in a really fun and interesting way. And I keep thinking about Thief, just the way the ending of Thief is also very different, and it's just cool when that happens. But I've learned that if it feels good to do the more predictable thing, I'll just do it. Now, some people won't. It
Hmm.
depends on who you are, but I don't know. I still love the big slow themes, and they're getting bigger and they're getting slower. Like the end of No Hill for a Climber is like really big and slow,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
the end of Deep Water
Yeah.
is big and slow, and it just feels great. Pass from death to life. We take that theme and play it really slow. It's just like a lot of classical music's like that too. And I think that a lot sometimes the composers you can hear that they get tired of doing they don't want to do the predictable thing, so they do something else, and a lot of times it's disappointing.
Launch out into the deep water.
You really like stressed a few times on like, letting the music take you to where it should go and whether that's predictable or not. And I obviously also know that this new band kind of like, grew out of very, you know, jazzy but jam session engagement between the people that are involved. Does that mean that when you start on this journey that would become Cosmic Cathedral, that you are also not really, that you don't have like a blueprint of this is what we kind of want to do, or I want to make sure these elements are in there? Is it like 100% organic and we could have had something completely different? Um, or when you start something new that is going to have a different name than other projects, do you have that voice in the back of your head that says, okay, we do have to make sure that this has its clearly defined identity, if you will, compared to other stuff? Like what's the mindset going into it at the start when you don't know yet where the music is necessarily going to take you?
Right. Well, it's all about discovery. I love the adventure and the discovery because you're right. We didn't know at all what we were going to do.
Right.
We started getting together and jamming. But there was a point at which I think we jammed for many days. And I remember taking day 5 jam. And this was really at the suggestion of Jerry Guidros, who was the co-producer. He said, I was a little bit lost because it seemed like the guys just wanted to keep getting together and jamming, which was fun, but it wasn't it wasn't really a record.
Right.
You'd have to somebody was going to have to go in there and
turn on recording.
Grab some of the good bits and develop them.
Right.
And Jerry said, you need to do your thing. He said, do your thing. And they're gonna love it. I was like, okay, well, I didn't want to force anything. I want this to be what it wants to be. But I felt the Lord in what Jerry said, really. I just in him, the way he was so. Sometimes I get a little indecisive, and it can help for me to have people around me that are a little more decisive.
Yeah.
And he was like, trust me, this is what you need to do. And I was like, okay. So I took day 5 jam and put markers on all the really cool parts and then developed them. And also then I wrote, when you're writing a prog piece, you're trying to get in the flow of it, so there was I had that launch out idea, which was really unrelated to anything else at that time. I had that in my phone, and I had this vision about it starting with a vocoder, and I love vocoder stuff, and so I had that vision, and then I had written that little do-do-do-dee out of that little instrumental thing. And then out of that, that next little bit where they break into their jam in 7 and there's that weird guitar thing over it, that is almost directly from the jam. So there's parts that are directly from the jam, but then I was like, okay, now where do we want to go? And I put in that little drum solo thing, and then I thought since we sing launch out, maybe that ought to be the first vocal thing, just like all of a sudden out of the blue, just launch out. And then I wrote that chorus, and then I didn't like it, and then I wrote a different chorus, and Jerry liked the first one better. It's a real dance,
Yeah.
And I wrote these verses, and then just kept on, and just what I would do is I would write some stuff, and then I'd go back to the jam, and I'd clip some stuff out, and I'd develop it, and I would put that in, and a lot of cutting and pasting and just moving forward until, my God, it was 38 minutes long.
Yeah.
It just kept getting longer and longer. It was crazy. Anyway, it's hard to describe the whole process because it wasn't really any one thing.
Yeah.
It was a lot of different things, kind of, and just trusting your instincts and moving forward.
Did Jerry then also equally had to stop you at some point? But you says Jerry kind of gave me the clarity to go do something, and said you can benefit from an external voice giving you some of that guidance. Are you at danger of continuing to play around with and fiddle and change it unless also external people say we got it, we're good? Is that something that would you work on a piece like this? Could you be working on that for 10 years if nobody stopped you?
No, I tend to be pretty task oriented, and that involves finishing things.
Right.
So, and I knew that I knew other stuff was coming around in the year. So we had last summer, really to,
It had to be done. Yeah.
because everybody had other things coming, and I knew, Morse Fest was coming, and if I went past that area, it was, and then you're into the holidays, I was just like, oh man. So I did have questions. I had questions. My questions were more like, hey, should we cut this part? When I start going, I'll just go, and
Yeah.
I went all the way demoing to the end, and then I cut and pasted and added, and like I mentioned, we changed some choruses, and Jerry was. We were pretty much on the same page, but I wanted to have it be at that point in the Deepwater development. I was really just bouncing stuff off Jerry, and then I sent it to the whole group because there were certain sections I was like, man, should we cut this section out? Is it just getting too much? But we decided to just keep it all. In fact, we extended a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
We added the whole guitar solo section of the New Revelations thing at the very end. Actually, that is actually cut and pasted bass and drums. They didn't play those bass and drums. That's Jerry creating the whole guitar solo section, and then I played organ over it and Phil played guitar over it, and it sounds fresh. I suppose if you were really detail oriented, you could probably go through and you could hear, oh, that's the same drum fill as this bar.
Yeah.
But so yeah, it happened really beautifully, and everybody just fell into it. And then but it still didn't come alive until Chester and Phil and Byron brought themselves to it, and when they started to play it, and that's when it all really clicked. Before that, it was like, I think this is good. And then after they played on it, it's like, oh, this is definitely good.
Sing along, child, into the deep water.
Just a curiosity for me, because we'd record this over the summer. We had the summer to basically do this. We had to be done by the end of the summer. If we forget for a second all the specific tasks and the technicality and the conversations between you and Jerry and the band and all the musicianship and the music education that goes into this, how influential are external factors like it was the summer? Because for me, when I listened to this album, I had a chance obviously to listen to the album already, the whole album, but definitely Deepwater Suite feels like a summer piece to me, and I don't really know how to describe what that exactly is. Just for me, like, it feels like good music for like a sunny afternoon in the summer. That just felt like a nice fit, and I just curious, as somebody who's obviously not remotely as educated in the world of music and technicality as you are, how much of an influence are external factors like that? Like, is this an album you could have created in the deep of winter, for example?
Well, some of the jamming stuff happened in winter. We first started jamming in January. I think that was the first jam that I started jamming. It was very exploratory. We were putting our toes in the water. I think the first time we jammed, it was just me and Chester, and then the next time we got Byron and Phil to join us was in the second half of January, and that is when really the "Time to Fly" song, a lot of it was in that jam, and bits of other things too. But I'm glad it feels that way. But yeah, you're right though. The Heart of Life was written in end of June, beginning of July. Deepwater was from Day 5 Jam, which I think was in June or early July, and then and kind of dealt with and developed over the summer. So yeah, I can see that. I like that idea that it has
some sunshine crept into the music. If you will.
Well, there's definitely a lot of light going on, and that of course, we're all Christians, so for us, that's the light of the Lord. But I'm glad that feeling is coming across, because we definitely felt it.
Maybe to wrap us up with a different thing then. Now that you mentioned, I mean, obviously people that watch this interview, and if they followed you, they know that your personal and religious beliefs seep into this music. You just have to listen to the songs, obviously, as well, to hear that. You all of your projects and your older bands as well, they've always had a solid following in the UK and Northern Europe. I'm originally from Belgium. I moved to Canada 13 years ago.
Oh,
I personally am not religious at all. Very on the nose religious music is a thing that is definitely more common in the States than it is in Northern or Western Europe. But you've always had that following there, and they've always followed you along with that. Like, has that surprised you in a way that as you got a little bit more specific about that it's not that your audience has reduced itself to only very religious Christian audiences in the States? Was that an interesting learning along the way, that no matter what people's belief systems are, that people still kind of connected to it?
it blows my mind all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know how this could be. I remember when I quit the bands and I made Testimony. That was the big moment.
Right.
That was the big kind of like coming out. It's like somebody coming out of the closet,
Right.
You could hear me becoming through the Spock's Beard albums, especially, more and more. And then on Snow, it's like, love will be your ministry, and all the Open Wide the Floodgates, and so many different songs on there are really about what I was experiencing in the Spirit.
Right.
Because the big change for me was experiencing the Holy Ghost. Was like, what? I'd done so many different things in my life. Been in Buddhist temples in Tokyo, and I did a lot of kind of New Age stuff in California, and I had a lot of really interesting, great experiences, but I'd never experienced anything like what I was experiencing in what the Christians call the Holy Ghost or the Holy Spirit. And so I was writing about, love beyond words. Love beyond words is what I was feeling in the Spirit. So I'm trying to put some kind of music and words to what I'm feeling, and I'm still doing that. And that's really a great challenge. And I suppose everybody's trying to do that with whatever they're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling all this anger. I want to get it, I want to express it in my music, or I'm feeling all this love for my wife. I want to express it in my music, or I think that's Jesus says, out of an abundance of the heart the mouth speaks. And I think people have appreciated that about me, whether they experienced it or not, whether they
Right.
had any experience with Jesus or not. I think that I'm really thankful that a lot of people have come along with me on this journey that don't have the same experience, but they still enjoy the music, and I think they appreciate that I'm being honest about my expression. And but there I am, on just last week on Cruise to the Edge, at the cruise party, singing Ever Interceding, which is very much of a Christian song.
Mm-hmm.
And the people are just loving it. I think they love the feeling of it. And I try. I'm always asking the Lord, how on the nose do you want me to be? Because I'm trying to have the music be His. Like, it's not about me and what I want to say. What do you want to say, Lord? And so many times I've felt like, He veils Him. In the Bible, a lot of things are hidden, and there's a strategy. Jesus says, "Don't tell anybody." He heals people and says, "Don't tell anybody." So there's this kind of strategy that God has, and always understand it. I'm just trying to be obedient in it, and I'm really very, very thrilled to just be able to make music that I feel like His blessing is upon and that other people enjoy.
There you go. For you, it's the Holy Spirit. For me, it's summer sunshine
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
music.
yeah.
Awesome.
That's
Well,
great.
Neal, I know you're going to be busy because, I mean, as we heard from the very get-go of this conversation, you're probably already 5 albums down the road that you've got ready to go. You're going to be playing more shows and all the kind of good stuff. So we'll see how much of Cosmic Cathedral life we can get out of you and the rest of the band. But thank you
Yeah,
so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And
you're
I
welcome.
wish you all the best with this album release cycle, and then all the other albums that are going to come still. I'm sure that if I check in again with you in a few months, we're already talking about 5 new releases or something like that. Have a wonderful rest of your Friday, and
All right,
excited for all your fans to discover the new music.
all right. Thank you, man.
You are awesome for watching this video. Click right here to see more content like it and subscribe to the channel.